Genesis chapter 1, and I want to just read this note to you. The idea of us coming to the earth realm is to experience life. Many of the things that we experience in life are not life, but distractions. Let's see if I can give you a chance. Many things that you experience aren't life, but they're distractions from life. And many times it's easy to follow the distraction. A thing that prevents someone from giving full attention to something else that's important, that's a distraction, and takes you away from life. Or the extreme agitation of the mind or emotional feelings. That's a distraction, takes you away from what life is. What comes into our life every day is not completely our doing, but it's every day offers us many opportunities to make a choice. And you can choose the distraction, or you can choose life. Okay? Life is given to us so we can realize its potential. Life is limitless and continues to move on. I was telling someone the other day, I said, the sun does not stop at 10 o'clock and just stand back and look and say, wow, look what I did. And just sits there for, it don't even sit there a second. It don't sit there for 5 minutes or 10. It just constantly moves and continually just sprays life everywhere. So life is limitless and it continues to move on. If life doesn't stop at a happy moment or a tragic moment, it continues on with the movement of the sun and the earth. And so I want to talk about that some more. We talked about it last week quite a bit. I want to talk about it quite a bit more. And I changed this morning, and I see Steve put his signature on the board.
Well, that's just part of me being back too, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I thought you wrote something profound like Wes does that. But you have to really think about the things Wes writes.
We'll be back to doing that in the near future.
Yeah, I have to scratch my head on a few of Wes's. His are like trying to study the Hebrew glyphs. They're coded. They're in a code. So if you found Genesis 1, I want to read that. And that, and I know probably we can all quote it. If not, we should. However, let's read it, and we're going to come back and we're going to work with it. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. The evening and the morning were the first day. Okay, and that lays a foundation in your mind of an idea. And what I want to do is just challenge that idea. That's all. Just want to challenge that idea by looking at the original Hebrew of what that really said. Because probably those 5 verses lay the foundation of the most profound idea that has ever been presented to humankind. And so I will present the idea that the Bible is not a history book about a history, but a mystery book about the mystery, which is you. So I'm going to present this as a suggestion, at least an idea, that what I'm talking about and what this book is talking about is you. Individual. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're at, or what you've done or haven't done. It has no bearing on any of those things. It's a book about you. And I think if we can try to entertain that thought, then we can realize, well, that makes sense, because if we are the temple, the house, the dwelling place of God, why would not the Bible be a book about that temple, that house, that dwelling place? And if you can kind of think that way for a little bit, and you look at it, you begin to say, wow, that's exactly what it is. It is a book about me and about my living life. And that's what God's given me that life for. He's given me that life to live, and to live abundantly. So I put these are the first 9 characters, and I did them on purpose this way, different from last week, but they're the same thing. And I did them on purpose because in the first 9 glyphs is the pattern, the blueprint, the design, the plan for everything that's materially manifest. Now that's saying a lot. Can you do that with 9 characters? And I said, yes, you can. 9 holy characters. And I want you to look at this. This is the Aleph, which is the number 1 glyph or character. Now Hebrew goes from left to right. It reads backwards. Okay, like if you pick up a right to left. That's what I'm saying, right to left. Y'all just heard left to right. It's just left. It's backwards to English. If you get a Hebrew Bible, you go to Genesis chapter 1, you go to what you would call the back of your Bible, which is the front of the Torah. And that's how it goes. It goes backwards to what we see. So that's why I put these up here. 1 through 9 lays the pattern, the plan, the design. And I broke it down like this for a reason. The reason is this. These 7 glyphs between the 1 and the 9 are the 7 glyphs that's manifested in the Scriptures as you. You say, how do you get that? Well, the first glyph, this is called the Beth, right? Everybody's familiar with that term, Beth or Veth. It has a B or a V sound. Either way you want to use it, can be sounded out either way, B or V. The Beth, which is number 2, and the reason it is number 2 is you can't have anything in a material or a manifest world without this. You have to have this. In a material manifest world, you have to have a Trinity. And you would say, why do you have to have a Trinity? Well, number 1, you have to have a source. You have to have I'll just put it this way, you have to have an idea. Have you ever had an idea? You had the idea before you ever had anything, right?
Yes.
And so the idea comes from a what? A mind. And so what this glyph represents, we say it represents God. But what is God? Well, God is mind. What is mind? Mind is that which thinks. So God is continually emanating thoughts. And you and I pick them up. We become recipients of them because they're just everywhere. They're in the atmosphere that you breathe. When you breathe, you're breathing God, and you're breathing God's mind, God's ideas. And many times we interpret those ideas differently than they were meant to be interpreted. I mean, that happens to me. It may not happen to you. I pick it up and do it wrong. That happens occasionally, sometimes more than it should. And so this Aleph represents God, our source, our number 1. And before this mind or this idea can ever materialize or can ever manifest or can ever be seen, that's what this glyph is about, the taught. This is the manifestation of God. That's what this glyph represents, the taught, because 9 is the mystical number. It's the number of mystery. Anything about the 9 always reduces back to the 9. Take any number that you multiply by 9, always comes back to 9. I mean, it's like you can even Google it, and Google will tell you that 9 is the number of mystery. The reason it is because 9 represents the manifestation of God. The Aleph, we always call this God, but this is the idea of God. It's a sign. It's not God. It's just a symbol. It's a sign. And so many times we don't realize that an ideogram is just a character or a figure that represents the idea. It's not God. It's just the idea or the sign or the symbol, the representation. And so the numbers between the 1 and the 9, which are the 7, I put these here, And all of these numbers represent different attributes or different characteristics about your physical body. They represent the 7 endocrine glands that builds your physical body, which is what Genesis 7 days is all about, which we'll look at that in just a little bit and we'll see that. So I use this and I put underneath the 7 building blocks of Genesis 1:1 through 2:4. That's what these characters are, 2 through 8. And just, you know, when you begin, as you begin to see them, they become more phenomenal. Because this is a living alphabet. It's not a dead letter. It's not a book. It is a living transcript. It's living and filled with life. And it's designed to give you that life so that you can live that life to its fullest, to your greatest potential. And every one of us longs for that. We just don't necessarily know how to do it. And sometimes it's not easy to tap into it and draw it out and bring it forth. And so I want you to look at a word with me right here in Genesis. We just read this. Verse 5, and God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. The evening and the morning were the first. Everybody say Echad.
Echad.
Echad. That's the Hebrew word for first. Now, hold your place right here in Genesis 1 and go with me to Genesis 25. Just flip over there real quickly. Genesis 25. And verse 25. Just look, Genesis 25 and verse 25. Everybody there? Okay. I want you to see this. Genesis 25 and verse 5. Verse 25. 25, chapter 25, verse 25. And the first, does everybody see that?
Yes.
In the English. Now in English, if you read first, what do you think of?
First.
Wow, that's deep, isn't it? That's deep, isn't it?
The beginning.
Alright, so now everybody say Echad.
Echad.
So from Genesis 1:5, we said, and he said, and that was the first day, right? So what do you think of? In your mind, this is already laid a plan or an idea in your mind. That was the first day that ever exists. Or you, in your mind, you're thinking, that was the beginning of creation. And well, you know, that first day could have lasted 1,000 years. Some people say that the first day, and I've heard some say, no, it represented 10,000 years. And the reason they had to do that is because science began to realize, well, you know, there are things on the earth that prove for a fact it's been here over 25,000 years, 250,000 years, 500,000 years. And then they say, wait a minute, what happened to our 6-day creation? And the earth's only been here for 6,000 or 7,000 years. See, all of that is shot to hell and back in a handbasket in today's scientific world. It don't hold any water at all, right? Y'all are real slow about that, right? No, brother, we talking about the Holy Writ.
Yeah, where is it?
We are, we just don't know how to read it. Because if we learn how to read it, then it will totally change everything. So, everybody say Echad.
Echad.
That's verse 5. Chapter 1 of Genesis. Well, look at this word right here. Verse 25. And the first. Everybody say Rashit.
Rashit.
Now, why in the world would they say Rashit for first in Genesis 25 and in Genesis 1:5 say Echad? Do you think those words mean the same thing?
You don't sound like they do.
They don't mean the same thing. At all. At all. They're not even close in the ballpark to mean the same thing. So I want to ask you a question. Would that make you think that maybe the translators was messing with my mind by using the same word for 2 different Hebrew words that mean different things?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. So Rashit and Echad don't mean the same thing. But notice how it's used here. Verse 25, and the first came out. The word Rashit is used in birthing, like as if you had twins or triplets, the first one to be manifest here would be Rashid. Follow that? So it has the idea of birthing. The first word in Genesis 1:1 in the beginning is this word, Ba-Rashid. Listen to that.
Yeah.
Beth Rashid. Same thing, same word. And this is the first glip that God chose to start the Bible out with. And you would think that since God is God and there's none above Him and there's not any source of power beyond Him, you'd think He would start out with the Aleph. But He didn't. He starts out with the Beth. Why does He start out with the Beth? Because the only way that the source can materialize or manifest is to split itself off into this right here, positive and negative. You could call it male and female, would be accurate, because there's nothing out here, period, that exists. Whether, I don't care whatever you want, a worm, a bug, a peacock, a human, there's not anything out here that doesn't exist that doesn't have a positive and negative. I don't care if it's a blade of grass. That's the only way God can materially manifest. So this is why this is called the pyramid of fire. Do you know why it's called the pyramid of fire and why it's a pyramid pointing up? Because that fire always goes up. And Scripture tells you very clearly, God is a consuming fire. Tells you very clearly in Numbers 18, God is not a man. But what did religion do? Make God into a man. And it tells you very clearly what God is. God is a consuming fire. In other words, He is endless energy. Endless. Fills all of the universe, everywhere. He fills every space. God is the space that fills with the space. There's nowhere God's not, nowhere space is not. Space is everywhere and in everything. Same thing's true with God. So this pyramid, these first three, represent the manifestation. So you have the one and you have the Beth, the Va'ith, the house, the container. So the very first glip in Genesis is Beth. And then the very next 5 glyphs are the same identical word as first right here in Genesis 25:25 when it deals with birthing a first child. So I suggest this to you, and it's not just my suggestion, and any Hebrew scholar who would really look at this would tell you the same thing is true with the first word, Ba-Rashid, in Genesis 1:1. Should not have been translated in the beginning. It should have been translated at birthing. Now, if I start out Genesis 1:1 with that word, at birthing, because when it says the first day, the Hebrew word for day is yom. And that word means facets of life. Happy life, long life. Different facets of life. And if I realize the word ikad doesn't actually mean first, but it means a united whole. So it could have 7 facets to it, but if it's the word ikad, it means a united whole. So the first place that we see the word first is not really referring to first as in a child, but it's referring to a united whole as in 7 functions or 9 different characters that actually mean one manifestation. Does that make sense for you? Can you entertain that thought? I know it's difficult because you're reading this, and when you read this in Genesis 1:1 through 5, you somehow or another we're trained to look at it from this translation, and I'm sad to say it's just not a very good translation. And honestly, I can't recommend a good one for you. But I have people all the time, well, what would you recommend I read? And I said, the Bible. There ain't no good one, and there ain't no bad one. They all have been really dumbed down and corrupted and changed and twisted. And I mean, over the years, it's amazing what's happened to a phenomenal book. So you have to really dig to see. But if you would stick with me, I guarantee you, I can show you some things you'd have to say, that makes sense. Well, the other one don't really make a lot of sense. So we'll go back and we're going to look at this and just see, because the first yom, as we call it, Ikad yom, the united whole of the 7 yoms, this one is laying the foundation. So whenever that seed of the father penetrated that egg of the mother, and boom, that created you, the thing that began to make that united whole, that 7 facets of that endocrine function of your body, that's what Genesis 1 is all about. Genesis 1 is about that at birthing. So, and I realize that's a little bit different. So, the 9 facets will represent the different, these glyphs as I put them, will represent the different facets of your being, the one united whole. So go back with me to Genesis 1, and I just wanted to give you that. And there's so many illustrations, and you can find this yourself if you want to get you a good concordance, look it up. You'll see the difference in the variations of those words or those glyphs. And so you can see that, you can see clear what I'm saying. And I realize it's kind of confusing to say it because we've all been taught so long one particular way, and that's fine, that's okay. Okay, go with me to Genesis chapter 1, and let's just read it again. Verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And if I wanted to say that or read it directly out of the Hebrew Torah, it would read like this. It would go Barashit, Bara. I mean, every one of these words in Hebrew don't mean what they were trying. Bara has to do with the child being birthed. The Hebrew word bara has to, many of them translates it as a son or a daughter, but actually the word just means a child, because it's not really focusing on a son or a daughter to magnify a male or female above either or, because they're one in the eyes of God. They're not, there's not that men have more privilege or or better or whatever, but so it starts out, this is how it reads, Barashit, Bara, Elohim, Et, and I talked about this word, Et, Aleph. This is how this word, Et, is spelled in Hebrew. It's Aleph, Tov, and actually the word is a profound word. It's just 2 words, or 2 glyphs. Et, that's how it's pronounced. Et or Ot. You think like A-T. Because it's the first glyph, the Aleph, and it's the 22nd glyph, the Tov. Which the Aleph is the timeless, and the last glyph, the Tov, is the time. And so when you have this word, it actually would be like in English saying, I want to explain this to you from A to Z. And if I said I want to explain it to you from A to Z, I would mean I'm going to show you the whole shebang. So that's important, because that word in its proper uses, I want to show you the whole shebang of shamayim. Now here's the Hebrew word for shamayim. Shin, Mem, Yod, final Mem. These are waters above. That's what these glyph right here refers to. Waters. You understand you're a water vessel. Mm-hmm. So these 2 glyphs right here, Shin, Mem, means the waters above, and these 2 right here means the waters below. And you're going to see that that's going to be a major topic in the middle of this chapter, because it starts talking about the waters above and the waters below. Now in our mind, and I remember, gosh, 40 years ago when I first started preaching, I used to always say, well, that was the clouds in the sky and the water in the lakes and the rivers and oceans. And so I said, there you go. They're above and below. I had that all figured out. But no, it's not referring to that at all. Here's what it's referring to. If I put the seven endocrine glands on the board, and of course I tell you that these seven, I like to do the yin and the yang because it represents the male and the female, which represents you. So the seven endocrine glands represents the physical body. The one, even though there's seven, you know you have seven major endocrine glands, right?
Yeah.
But you're one, right?
Yes.
That's ecod. You're one whole. Now there are, how many have heard, this represents a three-dimensional world. The three-dimensional world is the manifest world, which is the real world above all other worlds or whatever ideas. The manifest world, 3 dimensions. So how many dimensions are there? There's 9 dimensions. It's like, how many of you remember in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, there are how many I hate to use this word, but I will because most people are taught it. How many gifts of the Spirit are there? There are 9. 9 gifts of the Spirit. They're not. They're listed that way. And that whole chapter, they're listed that way, but here's what the chapter says. And the self-same Spirit. And then it tells you this part. And if I were to take a grapefruit, and I took a grapefruit and I cut it open. I cut it open and you saw 9, ever how many, I don't know how many I got there. Close, let's say I got 9. Let's just say I got 9. If I had 9 sections of that grapefruit, I would say, wow, look at the 9 grapefruits. What would you say? That ain't 9 grapefruits. That's just one grapefruit. Oh, there are 9 dimensions to it. Yeah, that's exactly right. But it's still an ecod. It's still a united whole. See, there are 9 dimensions to you. But the main dimension of you is the 3 dimension. Guess what? You live in a 3-dimensional world. Does that mean you can't go to the 4th dimension or 5th dimension or the 6th dimension or the 9th dimension? Absolutely not. They are all a part of the one whole that you represent. But yet still you live in this world of 9 dimensions, just exactly like those 9 glyphs in the Hebrew alphabet that lay the plan and the pattern for everything that is. So that little word et means I'm going to show you the whole thing about the waters above and the waters below. So now then we have the idea in this very first verse that God's going to show us everything there is about your physical body, which is the temple, which is the house, which is the home that God's going to live in. Now, I don't know about you, but that would begin to make me think, well, wow, so if that unfolds like a domino effect throughout the rest of Scriptures, then it's going to talk about the functions and the facets of this house, this temple, this body, and see how it works. And that's exactly what it does. I mean, exactly what it does. And it does it in signs, symbols, numbers, places, people, things. All of it are ideologies. They all come from the ideograms. They all represent you. Every one of them, no matter how you play them, no matter how you look at them, no matter what you do with them, they all still represent you. So, it says, Barashit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim va-et ha-iret. So it says, I'm going to show you, explain to you everything that there is about the waters above and the waters below, which represents the spiritual aspect of your body, both male and female, both spirit and body. The dualistic aspect, because every one of us are dualistic. You have inhale, exhale, your heart pulse, it beats, right? Everything. That's how this thing works that way. But it works in a very unique way, and it describes it very clearly right here, right out of the starting gate in verse 2. It says, in the earth, that's the eretz. The earth is the covering, the skin, the outer part. You can say, if you look at the ball, the Gaia, the globe that we call the earth, if you look at that globe and you realize that it's covered with dirt and trees and foliage and water and et cetera, et cetera. I think it's 3/4 water, isn't it? So it's a picture of the physical body. Any way you cut it, it's a picture of the physical body. It says, and the earth was without form and void. Actually, the word form and void is the Hebrew word tahu and bahu, which actually means that it is a place of unlimited swirling energy. I'm trying to say that nicely, because the way the Hebrew describes it would be like looking down in the hole of an outhouse. And if any of you have ever done that, you would look down there and you see there's all kinds of little critters swirling and moving down in there. And they do that, you know. I grew up on a farm, that's how we had to do that. And that's really what that word tahu and bohu means. It means unlimited potentiality. It's a picture of who you are. There is not any limit to the potentiality that you are. Now, we stifle that many times. We stifle it because of ideas and different things that have hindered us. But that's what those words mean, tahu and bahu. So the earth was, you see, the word was in Hebrew is the word became. It's kind of, you look at it, was without. That doesn't. The word was, the earth was without. No. Just read it this way. The earth became tahu and bohu. In other words, it became a swirling potentiality of anything and everything. In other words, you did, your physical body. And darkness. Everybody say darkness.
Darkness.
Darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved on the face of the waters. Notice that. The Spirit of God is moving on the face of the waters. Darkness is on the face of the deep. And God said, let there be light. That's the Hebrew word or, A-W-R, light. Actually, the word means illumination. And illumination means knowledge. Darkness means ignorance. And you can choose either or. And both will manifest. Ignorance will manifest all through your life. I mean, it has in mine. Got me in lots and lots of trouble. Light can manifest as easy. Both manifest. Knowledge or ignorance. And that's basically what both of those mean, because, someone had pointed out verse 16, if you'll notice. Now remember, this is the first, Echad. This is the united whole. So it doesn't make sense when you come up into verse 16 and all of a sudden you have this light called the sun. Is that a different light? Absolutely. It's not the word or, just like it's listed here. Knowledge. Knowledge. That's what or is. There are words that you will see translated that are very confusing because we do not have any, what am I looking for? Basic knowledge of the ancient Hebrew. Basic knowledge. Like for instance the word curse. You automatically think something horrible, bad, right? And it doesn't mean that at all. Like for instance the word Eve, not found in Genesis chapter 2, found at the end of Genesis chapter 3 twice, and that's it in the whole Bible. And you think about, wait a minute, something as horrific as a curse upon this particular woman named Eve, and then all of you women bear the brunt of that. And that's not at all what it's referring to, because the word curse is actually the word or. It's the same word as light against light. And actually what it's referring to is the light against light that causes tension. And so when you are creating a baby in the womb, like you do, that baby reaches a place to where it no longer wants to be there, right? It doesn't want to be in that dark tomb of the womb. And so what happens? The light from without begins to tug at it. And what does it do? And that baby begins to tug at you. Push and pull and kick and scream. I want out of here. Well, that's what a curse is. It's life bringing forth life. It's the light from without pulling and bringing a tension from the light within, and they call it a curse. It is not a curse. It is the most miraculous and phenomenal thing that we can ever imagine, and it got translated for the word curse. And the word Eve is not referring to a woman's name that was married to a man named Adam. It's actually referring to all of creation, which is the mother of us all. And all you have to do is look up the name Eve. Just look it up in the Hebrew. Ha'eva. It's the Hebrew word. And actually it just simply means the mother of the living. And that's every one of us are the results of that. So not the results of a man and a woman that didn't know what they were doing, got in trouble in Genesis chapter 2 because some snake could talk. Because there ain't no snake there that can talk. So I'm saying all of these things. I know they're sort of like, whoa, boom, they're big. It's way out of our box, but when we start to see, as we start to see the beauty of this is how the design of these glyphs begin to form this temple, this house, this building called the physical body, which is the most miraculous thing that exists in the earth, and it's called you and me. And these chapters build that in such a beautiful way. So, go back with me to verse 2. It says, in darkness, and the word darkness here, choshek, which actually just simply means ignorance. Because if you have to think about this, the sun and the rays of the sun are pulling you and me through the universe. And the sun's not going around the earth every day, right? Y'all know that, don't you? So what's happening? The earth is turning. The earth is doing like this. Right? And the sun is right here, and the earth is doing this number, right? Right?
And also this.
Exactly. And not only that, it's not just doing this number, it's doing this number. I'll get drunk and fall over here.
I can't stand it.
There's so much moving and turning going on. All at the same time. It's wonder we don't all walk like that. It's wonder we don't all like we're drunker than Cooter Brown. Poor Cooter Brown. Listen, it's my uncle. All the bad things that I learned. It's Cooter's fault. So anyway, and so when you read stuff like this, you think, wow, darkness, is there such a thing as darkness? No, the sun is always shining forth. The sun don't quit. It doesn't say, wait a minute now, I'm going to stop at 6 o'clock, y'all. I'm going to turn off. And so I ain't going to shine no more. It don't quit. It's just constant. It's just like God. It's forever. It's not ending. There is no end to the light, the energy, the power that comes from the sun. It doesn't stop. But the movement of the earth as it turns, in other words, you and me, it works, and it has to work that way so you and me will lay down and sleep, or we can't function. We have to have that rest. We have to have that time to get at least a few hours of sleep. And so the darkness comes to ignorance or obscurity. That's all it's called. That's what it's referring to. And then the light, which is the Hebrew or, which we talked about, and it just actually means illumination. And illumination means knowledge. And that's exactly, you could say that this morning if you listen, or if it's something you see that I say changes something that you believed, then you were illuminated, right? So some darkness shined and you thought, wow, I never thought of that. I didn't either. I used to do that all the time and get upset and kind of mad with God and throw my Bible. Why did they do that? Why didn't they trust? I thought you're supposed to be overseeing this, God. You're not doing a good job. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, I would go through all these gyrations and questions and upset and angry. And God did a phenomenal job. Really, He did. God didn't make a mistake. And it tucked it away and hid it here in such a beautiful language and symbolic language that as you see it, but sad to say it's presented this way, but you have to go in it and interpret it. You have to go in. So that when you see that glip to Beth, you realize that's referring to the house, the temple. And isn't that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Beth is the house. And that,
Yes.
so when you talk about the name, and then you have this glip right here, or this character glip. You have this one right here, this pyramid, and this pyramid is upside down to this pyramid, right? You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And this pyramid represents water. Why? Because water always seeks its lowest point. In other words, the floor looks flat here, right? But if we poured water in here, you'd find out the floor ain't flat. Why? Because the water will show you where the lowest point is at.
That's right.
Now you have to think about this with me, because Sheen, Mem, Yod, Mem, you're 3/4 or more percent water. So there's 3/4 of a pull on you in a downward fashion. You always say, pardon my French, why is it so damn hard? Because 3/4 of the water's trying to pull you down the hole.
But the other quarters evaporate.
Yeah. And so you say like that. But when you take this and you marry to that, here's what you get. And what do you call that? That's the Star of David. And all the Star of David is a symbol that just, again, all these are signs and symbols. This is just a symbol that represents the fire, or God, source, has married itself to this lowest nature that it could possibly build, called humanity, and made them echad. One. Merge those together so that they would be one. Echad means one united whole. It does not mean first. So the end of the first day is referring to one united whole of the 9 dimensions that produced the 7 facets of life that represents you. It's just a marrying and a merging continually of numbers and signs and symbols. And the more it's like chemistry. The more you can begin to learn the mixture and put this stuff together, the more you and I will begin to see the phenomena of who we are. Now there is another glip that sits in the middle of these two that's just like these two. And if you would, you can go with me. I want to show you this. I think it's in, I don't even know if I wrote it down, but I don't believe I did write it down, but it's in Isaiah. Go with me to Isaiah real quickly. And I'll kind of close this out here. The book of Isaiah, 66. And y'all have all heard this, and I know you have. So you don't have to be a Bible scholar to hear the things or see the things that I'm trying to say, because you've already heard it. You don't have to go to church to hear this stuff. Most of this stuff you've heard it just because some of it's just street language that people have picked up from the Bible. You know, when you go to talk about Noah and the big boat, you tell me somebody ain't never heard of Noah and the big boat. I don't care. They didn't have to go to church to learn about Noah and the big boat. Now, you tell me it's somebody that hadn't heard of Adam and Eve and that talking snake. I mean, if you're born in America, or if you crossed the border illegally to get here, it don't matter if you're here, you heard of that. Because everybody have. And they heard a story that's not true.
Yeah.
It's hard to change anybody. You know good well that's true. No, I don't. It's not true. This is the same way with this that I'm about to show you. It's just exactly, you all know about the giants, don't you? Took yourself them good-looking women, said we're going to marry one of them, have us some babies, big babies. Yeah. Yeah. You know, that don't work. It's just mistranslations of simple words. This is what this is right here. Isaiah 66, this is just one place that this word is used. I've just picked this one out. It says, for behold, the Lord will come how? Verse 15, I'm sorry. Isaiah 66 and verse 15. I forgot that. Did y'all find it? Verse 15, for behold, the Lord will come how?
With fire.
Why? Because God is a consuming fire. How else can He come? The Lord will come with fire and with His what? Chariots. And what did you see here? What do you see? Do you see a UFO? Some kind of or do you see, I guess a lot of the picture that most of us have been given comes from Greek mythology, where you probably see these big steeds, white horses.
From the movie Ben-Hur.
Yeah, there you go. From Ben-Hur, of course. Pulling this buggy, this four-wheel buggy, right? And you call that the chariot. And so then there's a teaching, an entire teaching on the Merkabah. Right? Y'all heard of that now. Merkabah, that's the Hebrew word, Merkabah. And actually the word Merkabah just simply means swirling energy. And that's exactly what is between the pyramid of fire and the upside down pyramid of water is the Merkabah. And what is the purpose of the Merkabah? It is the energy of the source of fire that merges itself with the material manifest world to Echad, make it one united whole. Now, I know that's not the picture that you've heard. I've got so many books I've read about the Merkabah, and they have these, like Steve said, they have these horse chariots and all this kind of stuff. And these are, of course, these are heavenly horses. They all have wings growing out the backs of their shoulders.
So we got a bunch of Pegasuses.
They don't exist. They're not real. Those aren't real, folks. Those are really ideas. They're very immature, childish ideas that are trying to convey this energy that don't have. It doesn't look like a horse, a white stallion. It doesn't have big wings out of its shoulders. It's nothing at all like that. It's a swirling energy. It's in this room right now. The Merkabah is in this room presently to unite you with yourself, to make you one, Echad.
Yes,
To marry the waters which are above to the waters which are below, to bring those energies together, and they're there for your purpose. My purpose. What? To give us this beautiful thing called life so that we can live this life to its fullest. You know, it's like I said, you know, I'm teasing till I'm 69. And I am just beginning to live my best life yet. Why would we want to wait and say, well, I'm getting old. I'm winding down, wearing out. Why not say that, no, I'm growing stronger and younger and more vigorous and more energetic, because my cells in my body, they are responding to me, and they think, well, he thinks he's getting old, but yet we're renewing him all the time, and he don't realize we're renewing him all the time. And science knows that, and they're scratching their heads, wait a minute now, that thing's being renewed all the time. There's new cells, and then the old cells are dying off, but now these new cells are all coming back on, and this is, I mean, you know, while I'm breathing on y'all, I'm getting rid of all these dead ones, and y'all breathing them in.
Thanks.
That's all right, there's 10 of us breathing dead back at you, so it's okay.
We all just want to be whole, I don't care, you know, we're just one, we're breathing the same air. We're in the same energy, we're in the same swirling pool of light. So when we read these verses of Scripture and we don't have the proper idea of what these words say, we draw the wrong picture. We paint a picture that's not true, and then we accept the not true picture thinking it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a story we've been told, and whether there's a better way to tell the story or not, I feel there would be, but if you can see what these words mean and then put the picture together for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How many of y'all have done a puzzle? Puzzles are fun, but they can get tiring.
Mm-hmm.
You try and try and try and, well, that's what this is. And I have tried and tried and tried for 150 years to put this puzzle together, and I've found a bunch of pieces that fit. And I said, wow, look what a picture this paints. And it draws. And it's a different picture. It's a picture of you from a glorious fashion, not from a cursed. I mean, I can't help it, I'm cursed. You can help it. You can do something. You can. You like the little, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. I know you can, right? I know you can, I know you can. All right. Let's, Father, we thank you for our time that we have to come together and just to be enriched by your truth and your word. And we just ask you, Father, to just enjoy the rest of this day with us as we enjoy it with one another. In Christ's name, amen.